Wait, I think there's tape along here, Kathy. I could see it, yeah.
Okay.
I have
To wear my
some nails.
glasses. Oh, okay, I thought that,
Okay, I think I got it.
yeah, oh my goodness.
Yeah, there's 2 layers too, which we found out at my Mahjong game.
Oh, these
They're
haven't
really
been
good.
brought into.
It's this heavy
You want
chocolate.
me to open them?
Yeah, I didn't bring them close.
I don't want to just go ahead and do it without your, okay, or do we have to have a motion to open this? Okay.
You're making the appropriate motion.
Okay, I think that Margie has already passed on them,
Oh, really?
yeah. Oh, here's the top. Tis the season. So, when do your classes let out? Oh, yeah. And who studies over Christmas? Of course, you always say you're going to, but you don't. Well, Berkeley used to be on that schedule, and that, well, they were at quarters, actually. And I think, but still the quarter overlapped the vacation, and then they switched to semesters, and then they started in August, so that they would get over before Christmas. Yeah. Isn't that really a quarter? So more than, yeah, when I was in high school, we had the same class all year. But we did have like quarters or semesters, and that marked when the testing happened.
Kathy, do you want to share? Tara, I'm interested in co-chair, vice chair. Oh dear.
I haven't gotten sick so far.
Normally, the tradition has been sort of to graduate.
I finally stopped getting every disease that my grandkids have.
Yeah, I can't blame this on my grandson. This came from somewhere else. Yeah. Yes. Okay, I think we are ready to begin. Apologize for my croaky voice. I have the dregs of some bronchitis, and I should be on the end, but so it seems a little worse than maybe it is. But anyway, we have a fairly light agenda for this evening for a change. Thank you. I've had some of those. Yeah. So let's begin. First of all, the action minutes from November 7th. Do you have any problems?
I have a comment
Corrections? Yeah.
on number 9, future agenda items. 'Cause, when I took my notes in November, I had aging in place, rent review, A1, and inclusivity. I'm quite sure that's what I have for November. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. The agenda items that I had listed from November for this meeting would be aging in place, rent review, which would be an action item, A1 and inclusivity. So I didn't see all of those in the,
Yeah.
on the list today.
The item that says senior center is aging in place.
Oh, okay.
Scheduled for February, I believe.
Okay, so we move that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I'll talk a little bit about inclusivity, just as an announcement, so.
But we also, what's listed on number 9, Community Resource Center, I guess that's there, rent review, but we don't have inclusivity or A1.
We'll make a brief
Yeah.
report, but we don't have any action to this point. We're in
Okay.
process.
Okay, so where is that on our agenda today?
It isn't on the agenda, we just.
Just be
you know,
announcement.
Okay, okay.
Under announcements?
Yeah.
Well, it's just kind of like we have these 3 different versions of the agenda.
Yeah, no, everything is in motion and in different places, but
Okay,
I don't think we've left anything out, it just may not be tonight.
okay, all right, okay.
Okay, any other?
Can you make sure that your microphone is on? Is the red light on?
Yeah, no, it isn't. Yeah,
To flip it
Bit under.
upside
there's
down.
a switch.
Flip the switch.
There you go.
okay. Any other suggestions, corrections, problems with the minutes? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's everybody. So moving on to public comment. It's an opportunity for people who would like to comment to the commission on anything that is not on the agenda. Anyone have a comment about anything that's not on the agenda? No? Okay. Announcements from committee members.
Yeah, I can talk a little
go
bit.
ahead.
Yeah, so last week on Wednesday, I met with Bart and Isabel to talk about our inclusivity plan, which we're working on forming. So right now, we're still kind of in the information gathering stage in terms of really honing in on identifying issues and specific point people to be in contact with. But we plan to meet again in January to continue going ahead with developing the plan specifically.
Yeah, we were hoping to have a plan draft no later than February.
Okay, when I looked at the papers you passed out last time, I think it was last time, it looks like you're doing it based on complaints. You're not just looking at areas where people have complained, or is that, I mean, that would be one
No.
area that you're looking at, I'm
We're
sure, but,
not exactly complaints. We're looking for areas where people feel the city could or should be more inclusive.
Okay.
Right, yeah, so we're definitely trying to reach out to groups regardless of whether they have a history of being vocal about their issues.
But as you understand, the idea is not to do the planning now, but to propose a process. So we're just looking for examples at this point. We're not looking to define the issue.
Okay.
Yeah, and at one of our meetings, you had brought with you some examples of different inclusivity plans that other communities had. But could you tell us how we can get copies of that or pull those up?
Sure, I'll send out the links.
Okay, great.
We were able to print it out.
Yeah, but I can
Yeah.
send you the links as well.
You can send them to me, and I'll make sure that each of the commissioners.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where we are. We're in process. And I've been traveling a lot, and I've been sick the last, so I haven't been able to do as much as I would like. Tara's been soldiering away, so.
It's a process.
Okay. Any other announcements from committee members? Okay, Isabel?
No announcements.
No announcements.
So you're still our person? Like, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I'm still the staff liaison to the social and economic justice.
Okay.
Well, we know that we should congratulate Isabel for now being the acting assistant city manager. Is that
The interim assistant city
interim
manager.
city? All right. Never get titles quite right. So, so I think it's well deserved, and I'm glad you're continuing to work with us.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Me too.
So moving on, we have the opportunity this evening to hear about the Community Resource Center, which everyone remembers we spent a number of years working on, and it has come to pass. And Allison will tell us about what's been happening in just the first couple of months. We really just started operating in September, so it's just been a couple of months.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I'm croaky as well, so
Okay.
bear with me. Just gotta stay. Okay. Do I control it here? Hey, look at that. So you all have been working on the Resource Center longer than I have. So please correct me if I have any errors about the history. But when I was putting together this presentation, I thought it's always good to start at the beginning. The Social and Economic Justice Commission, had been working on getting some sort of resource center and did the social service needs assessment, and then made it part of your work plan. And you know that history much better than I do. I know from when I started in June, when y'all hired me. We opened September the 8th, and we had our open house as part of Albany Local Week, the last week of September. And you can see our numbers for the first 3 months. This is just sort of an overview, and I have a lot more detail on the upcoming slide. But in general, we're open Wednesdays and Fridays from 10 to 1. So depending on when the first Wednesday of the month is, it looks like we're usually open 7 or 8 days during the month. Our number of visitors seeking services has been going steadily up. The first month we had 7. In September and October we had 15. And in November we had 16. And these are not, they're unduplicated for each month, but they're not necessarily unduplicated all together. There's some of the same people coming September and October and November. We've had a lot of visits to the center, so the number of visits is anytime anyone came. For September, that includes open house attendees, people seeking services, people just checking it out, people volunteering, and then it gets a little bit more divided out in October and November. So in October, we had 32 people seeking services for, or 32 visits, again, repeat people, seeking services for themselves or someone else, and in November, 26. And we have a pretty fantastic team of steady volunteers. We had 11 people in September. A lot of extra folks came to help with the open house. And then in October and November, we had 8 and 9 volunteers. And people usually come about once a week. We have some fantastic volunteers here in our audience who are really, they're dedicated. And it's really wonderful to know that I can count on them to be there. And yeah, it's great. So in October, they provided 28 days of service, and in November, we started counting hours, because some folks come help and set up, and some folks just come to help take down, or a little of both. And so our 9 volunteers in November provided 55 hours of service, which I think is pretty fantastic. We have 4 levels of service at the Resource Center. The first level of service is a conversation. So I think all of you, except for maybe Tara, have been to the center itself. And so, Tara, have you been to the Albany United Methodist Church?
Yes.
Okay, so you know
I've been by the center,
you
just
know-
not during
It's
operation.
not when I'm there. Okay. So it's in the community hall.
Yeah.
So you walk in and we have a table where people can sign in and grab a water bottle. We have these beautiful community resource center water bottles and just generally be greeted. And then in that big room, we have topical stations. So we have bulletin boards and binders about housing, homeless services, immigration, LGBTQ services, senior services, childcare, medical care, et cetera. So folks can self-serve and just kind of wander around and look at them. We actually haven't had too many people do that. A lot of people come in and want to talk to someone. And so those are our conversations. And it usually starts out fairly casual. Folks are welcomed into the center. They're offered tea, coffee, snacks, the chance to just sit down, use the restroom, use the internet, use the phone, et cetera. And sometimes people are just looking for emotional support about an issue that's up in their lives. Sometimes they have a specific issue that they need a resource for. And so from conversations, they can go a couple of different directions as you follow the arrows. So they can get a referral from myself or one of the volunteers. They say, I need medical care, I don't have a primary care doctor, I don't have health insurance, and we will say, oh, you can go to Lifelong, or oh, you can go to Sutter East Bay Medical Foundation, depending on who they are and what their needs are. And at the referral level, folks, they usually just take the information with them and they make the phone calls themselves. If they come in with more complex needs, then they're served at the advocacy level. These are folks who need help, who just a phone number or a flyer is not going to cut it. They have multiple co-occurring factors, and they need help. And so myself or one of the volunteers, or sometimes us as a team, as some of our volunteer training, will respond to those needs. And I have some case studies later with some examples. In addition to that, we have several other agencies co-locating at the center. So Albany Project Hope, our case manager, is there once a week, more as needed, but she's there every Wednesday and on Fridays as needed for follow-up. We have Berkeley Mental Health twice a month, Jewish Family and Children's Services doing immigration consultations once a month. And we had a dental hygienist volunteering to do oral hygiene, and it turned out that it wasn't a good fit because of her licensing requirements. She couldn't offer a high enough level of service to meet the needs, so we're in conversation about how she can better serve the population, and we're talking about doing oral health screenings for school entry in the spring. But one of the things that we've been getting feedback on is that people really like this space. It's sunny, it's airy, the entrance is on Stanage rather than on Marin, and so it feels quieter. There's just a little bit of outdoor space, and no one really goes out there, but the doors are open to the patio, so there's the invitation that you could if you wanted to. You can see the trees, and almost everyone says, oh, it's such a lovely space, or oh, it's so pleasant here, it's so peaceful here. And so I think that's really nice that people feel comfortable, like they can relax there. Another great thing about the space is besides the big main room, there's like the bump out area that divides off, and so that's our more private area for one-on-one consultations, or if someone doesn't want to share their story in the big open room, myself or the volunteers or the other agency representatives can have that more private meeting in the conference area, and folks have taken advantage of that. What else did I want to tell you about that? Some of the challenges about our space is that it is impermanent. We're a pop-up shop, so daily setup and takedown, while the volunteers are fantastic at it, and I'm so grateful to have them, it's a challenge. Some of our stuff gets wrinkled when we put it away. It's just gonna happen. We have limited storage at the church, and so we're limited in what we can provide there. and work I could do on closed days, like updating. Some of the resources are updating the bulletin boards. It's just harder to do when it's all locked away in spaces. But I think an unexpected bonus of this space is that it's becoming a place where like-minded Albany residents can get together and talk about how they want to make Albany a better place. And as I'm working one-on-one with people seeking services, I often overhear conversations between volunteers and visitors about what are the issues, how can we work together to make it better, and it's really inspiring to be a part of. And it's different than the senior center or the community center in that it's not necessarily folks coming to take a class or looking to be served, but looking how can they be of service, and the resource center gives them opportunity to do that and be engaged with the community. Another, I think, sort of unexpected benefit of the center is that I've been asked for consultation with city staff and library staff around folks that they meet in their day-to-day jobs who are underserved or experiencing challenges. And not only do they have a place to send them, excuse me, they also can call me. I actually had 2 calls today about someone who was experiencing. I have it, thank you.
Okay.
I'm just not using it.
Want a Pine Brothers throat lozenge?
I have one.
Okay.
Don't breathe. So I think it's a good use of the center that there's somewhere and someone that people can call and say, hey, I need help. What would you do in this situation, or can we make an appointment? Additionally, the center gives a space for these other agencies that would otherwise not be in Albany to offer services like Berkeley Mental Health, and even like Project Hope. It's a challenge. A lot of our clients who are meeting with our case manager have said that it's hard for them to get to Berkeley, but they can meet with her at this center. And so I think it's important to give that physical space because it's just easier for people to get to. So this is a comparison of our numbers for September, October, and November, divided out by level of service. Conversations, referrals, and advocacy in the top chart. And you can see the numbers have been going steadily up. In September, we had 16 conversations. October, we only had 15. And then in November, we had 43. And the topics are around shelter and housing and medical care most often, and then followed by dental care, and sometimes senior services, particularly people looking for help caring for their aging parents. We've had a lot of people come in stressed out, don't know what to do, looking for help. And then in the bottom chart, you can see for each one, we've got the number of times each of these agencies were available at the center, and then how many people they saw in a month. Okay. Still good, okay. This slide shows you some numbers about basically things that I'm doing outside of the center hours. So we're open Wednesdays and Fridays, but I get a lot of phone calls and emails outside of those hours, people requesting help. So this is just a way to try and track that if people can't come to the center, what are they asking for? And I'm still working on collating the November numbers. In September, 14 people called asking for help. In October, 10. A lot of phone calls, and sometimes I get repeat phone calls. You know, someone will call. All 3 months, I've had at least one person call 4 or 5 times, either with multiple needs or just stressed out about the one need. Even if we've already talked about it, even if I've already given them resources, it's still hard. It's still challenging. It's up for them. And occasionally I have also been meeting with folks outside of center hours if they just can't make it, or they can't get to the center. We have one client who can make it to the senior center, but not to the resource center, and so I meet with that person at the senior center. And then the second chart breaks it out by conversations, referrals, and advocacy again. And similar issues, housing, homelessness, medical care, dental care, a little bit of child care.
What's the MOW?
Oh, Meals on Wheels.
Okay.
I had one Meals on Wheels client who needed looking in on, and so I did a couple of home visits, home checks. This is one of 3 slides telling you about the outreach that I have been working on, and a couple of different ways. I have been calling places, emailing with folks, or having in-person meetings, either scheduled or just showing up. You can read these, and I'm not going to read them all to you. But the ones I'm most excited about in this past month are connecting with the Albany Unified School District and getting our flyers approved. So they've now been sent out to all of the schools. They're posted on all the school bulletin boards, and each school is making their own decision about whether or not they're going to email them out or include them in packets to the families. And I also reached out to Golden Gate Fields this month, so I was able to connect with a maintenance worker who said he would put the flyers in their break room, and he suggested I connect with the equestrian care workers, and I had more difficulty accessing that facility, but I was able to get to the sort of the front and pass on my flyers, so that'll be an ongoing place for it that I'm trying to connect in. I've also had a lot of people emailing me who want to volunteer, who have specific skills, a retired LCSW, a domestic violence counselor, a lactation consultant. And so I'm talking with folks about what they want to offer and whether it's meeting needs that we're seeing. So these are a list of community meetings I attended or presented at, various Albany services, Senior Center, the UC Berkeley University Village Residents Association, the Senior Center Dinner Program, the Berkeley Food Network. They put on a volunteer management training, which I went to and got to connect with some of the area soup kitchens and food banks, food pantries rather. We've got a pretty good collaboration going with the University Village Social Service Department. They're really excited about us and want to connect us with their families, particularly family members who are not students, who are less well-served by the university offerings. And they started a diaper bank this past month, and I collaborated with them to provide them with statistics to apply for the grant, and they got it, so they're really excited about that. And I went to the first distribution and talked with some of the parents. We're also on the list to become a field placement for the UC Berkeley School of Social Welfare MSW program for next year. So I started that process of applying as an agency and went to the first orientation meeting in November. Lots of flyer distribution. Our volunteers just distribute flyers, and I put them up and just kind of always have them with me. And, I brought a bunch to share with all of you. So here's some of them. Looks like some of them fell out in my bag. So the flyer is in English and Spanish. Oh, yay. And this is our flyer about immigration services.
Do you ever have the postcards? Oh, great.
Yay.
So pass those along. We were featured in the NAMI newsletter this past month, and we distributed flyers with the Meals on Wheels food distribution one day this past month. So everyone who receives Meals on Wheels got flyers for the Resource Center. What else about that? Let's see. We also connected with the Albany YMCA. They have a financial assistance program And they're interested in connecting more people, particularly folks who want subsidized memberships or help paying for childcare. They're really interested in supporting more of the community, and they're doing a toiletries drive, and the whatever they collect will be donated to the center. And finally, I wanted to give you some more of the human side of the center, of some of our stories, which may be familiar to you from the reports. But our very first visitor was a retired teacher, 77 years old. She had been homeless in Albany for 8 months. She'd slept on the streets, in shelters, had bad experiences in shelters, felt very unsafe everywhere she was. She ended up sleeping in a friend's van for a long time, but she was cold, and thankfully in pretty good health, but still wanted to get inside. She had had her phone stolen, her glasses stolen, just really, really challenging. And she had never heard of Project Hope. She was just kind of doing her thing. But once she came to the center, she came on the very first day and found out about Project Hope. She made it through the intake process pretty quickly. She came every day in the month of September. We got her signed up for a free eye exam and glasses through the Lens Crafters One Site program and connected her to the Albany Senior Center dinner program. And she was housed by the end of September. Wow. and loving her home. So she's really happy, and we're really happy for her. Now, I don't.
That's all you did. That's like fantastic.
Yeah.
And all the other stuff, it's wonderful.
Thank you. Oh, no. I appreciate the
Sure, but
feedback.
I'm so impressed. It's really fabulous.
Also, I don't want to set the bar that high. Not everyone is going to be housed in 3 weeks, but that was a case that was good, and we're so happy for her. Another case was a woman who has been caring for her mother who has Alzheimer's, and she was just overwhelmed and needed to talk. She's been the sole caregiver for her 83-year-old mother for many years now, and she talked to one of our volunteers for an extended period of time, and then she talked to me and kind of told us the story of what's challenging and that she just really needed help and emotional support. And we got her connected with Ashby Village and the Alzheimer's Association Caregiver Support Group, and helped her apply for a respite care grant. And we're still waiting to hear whether or not she got it. But sometimes even if you don't get concrete help, just telling the story and having someone say, wow, that sounds really hard, like you're doing a great job. And she was really grateful just to have someone say that to her, and to have a place to come. Friends can say that, but they don't always do it, or you don't always want to ask. And our final case study that I wanted to share is a 28-year-old asylum seeker and her 7-year-old daughter. They fled their home country due to domestic violence and religious persecution, and their housing was at risk due to lack of income. They had landed in a women's shelter in San Francisco, but reached the end of their stay there. This client had already obtained her work permit, even though her asylum case had not yet been granted. But everything is different here. Even though she speaks English, the whole paperwork to apply for jobs, you have to do it via computer. You can't do it on paper. And she didn't have childcare, but she didn't know how to get childcare. It's just very confusing. It's confusing if you grew up in this country, but fleeing violence and having trauma, it was really confusing. So we helped her apply for subsidized childcare through the Y, which was approved. And she is now working a part-time job, able to contribute towards her rent. She has a rent subsidy through January. Helped her apply for a couple of jobs, and she's now connected with the Berkeley One Stop Career Center to help her continue on her job search. Another challenge she was facing is that her daughter needed dental surgery, and she didn't know if her insurance was going to cover it, and the only place that would do it was far away. They don't have a car. She didn't know how she was going to get her home on public transit, and one of our volunteers did a lot of research into what are the options for getting her daughter home, and found her a bunch of options and worked with the shelter they had been staying at to get her a safe ride home. And so she was able to schedule that surgery, knowing that she wouldn't have to carry her anesthetized daughter home on BART. So, it's complicated. complicated, and we're doing our best. And now, this month, we're starting to see folks with more complex needs, folks who have been homeless for a long time, who it's really hard for them to walk in the door of the center, and they'll say it openly. I've known I needed help for months, and I didn't want to, or it's hard for me, or they'll just say it's hard for me to be here and I have to leave now. But so far, they've been coming back, so that's a good sign. And so, for the future, I'm hoping to be able to offer a stress relief support group, stress relief for folks living outside or for folks about to become housed. That's another thing we're seeing is folks who are so close, and it's terrifying to try and change your situation. And a lot comes up when you've been self-reliant and have the freedom of I can just move wherever I'm going to go, and now I'm going to go inside. So yeah, there's a lot I could say, but that's everything I put together for now. I'm happy to take questions.
You kind of answered this already, but would it be helpful to have...
Margie, excuse me, can you speak? Please?
Yes, I'm sorry. Would it be helpful to be open one evening a week? I mean, you're talking to people off hours and stuff, but for people that are working, would that be like a good addition? That if we had one evening a month or something where...
I'm not sure. So far, it could be because these are the hours we're open, but so far the people we're reaching are folks who are disabled, retired, homeless, not working.
Yeah.
I imagine it could be useful. I'm not sure that the need is there yet. I think as we grow and people learn about us more, I'll be interested as we get more phone calls to see if folks are saying, gosh, I really wish that you were open in the evening. But so far I haven't had a request. Folks have been able to meet with me during the day.
Okay. And one of my dreams for the center was to have like an area where there were couches and easy chairs and people could just like relax and that's probably something you would have to like get donations. And I don't know how open the church is to bringing stuff, and maybe we could talk offline about that. Never mind, I won't take up your...
No, it's just an interesting, because I understand what you're saying in terms of like having a welcoming space. And I think even though we have like folding tables and folding chairs, people are comfortable. People hang out. You guys are there.
Get their cup of coffee, they just come in and people talk. It's very, very friendly.
We have kind of like the cozy chairs in the conference area. So of course, more welcoming is always better. And I think it's actually pretty welcoming as it is.
I think it's great.
And I'm not taking it as criticism, but yeah.
Okay, and then does this, when you said you're in touch with the UC Berkeley Department of Social Work, does this mean your assignment's just for a year, or how long do we have you for?
Well, you guys hired me through June, so I'm done with my program, but this would be to get an intern in addition to me.
Well, you're fabulous, and I really applaud all the work you're doing. I'm so happy. Like, this has been 6 years coming, so it's like, it's so great that it's turning out so
Thank you.
great. And, you're a big part of that. That's a big reason. If the leader wasn't good, it wouldn't come off. But I've heard really good things about you and about the program, the resource center. So I think it couldn't be greater.
Oh my goodness, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And are you going to report to the city council at any point? Is that?
January, I think the
Okay.
plan is, or
I think
maybe.
at January or February. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
I wanted to say too that it's really very exciting because a lot of the things that are happening are exactly the things we hoped would happen. The fact that, that people are reaching out, the fact that people are offering services there. It's early. It's only been a couple of months. But the numbers are looking good. And the services that are being delivered are looking good. And what's really striking to me is, I don't know if the hub is a place or if the hub is you. Because, you're seeing as many people outside of the center as inside the center. And it really speaks to maybe the most important thing was to have somebody in the city whose job it was to be there for people who had need. looking down the road, and it's early now, there may come a point where it becomes important to start thinking about, well, where do we go from here? Is it more hours? Is it a bigger place? Ultimately, it might be nice ultimately if it was in a space that was sort of a public space as opposed to the church, although the church has been great in many ways, and I'm always in favor of starting things in church basements. They're perfect. But ultimately, it would really be nice if it could be in well, I've always thought the Veterans Building would be perfect if we could really get a hold of that. Because it'd be near the shelters, very centrally located. But at any rate, I just want to say I'm very, very pleased, and I agree entirely with Margie that a lot of it is you. You really jumped in and you knew exactly what to do, and so I couldn't be happier.
Can I?
Can I say something?
Yes.
Well, praises from me as well. I'm just amazed at the difference it can make to have somebody in there coordinating the resources that are available. And the resources are there, and the people who need it are there, and they often don't connect. But they definitely are connecting now. I'm really impressed. And I had a question about services for emotionally or mentally challenged people, some of whom may be homeless. Are you prepared to deal with that type of situation?
I think it depends on the situation. I have my MSW training and my experience, so I am prepared up to a point. When we have our Berkeley mental health agency staff there, I think we're more prepared. Also, we had one person who was really having a lot of emotional difficulty, who was calling repeatedly, and the Berkeley mental health person talked to her on the phone several times in addition to me, and that was useful. Yeah, I think folks come in a lot of varying emotional states. I think if there was someone who came in with a really severe mental health challenge, and there were a lot of other people, and I was the only staff, that might be challenging on that day. It just kind of depends on the makeup. But I think I'm prepared to know what to do, if not to be able to handle it 100% myself.
Yeah, I ran into somebody who seemed to be not entirely grounded in reality. And I was trying to explain to this person about the resource center, and I just thought, well, if this person came there with a story that was being told, would the resource staff be able to deal with it, especially not being grounded in reality? How would you help that person?
I think it would depend on what their needs are, but the philosophy is to use a trauma-informed approach and meet people where they're at. And so the first step would be just to listen, and with everyone I do the advocacy level work with, we talk about goals. So even if someone's not grounded in reality, they have something that they want. They want to feel better, they want to use the restroom, they want to, whatever it is. And so we can start there and say, how can we help you right now? And then get more information and kind of tease it out in that way.
One thing I wanted to say is that I think one of the most illuminating aspects of this for me has been following the specific case studies and reading these people's stories. It's definitely done a lot to broaden my perspective on who's in my community and recognize the diversity of needs. So those case studies are really valuable to me, and I wanted to reiterate that. And one question I had was, obviously the Resource Center is fairly new, and this is going to change with the outreach that you have been doing. But how, up to this point, has it seemed like most people are learning about the resource center? Does it seem to be mostly word of mouth? Have people said that they've seen flyers?
It's been a variety, and I'm working on, I actually asked people that on the forums, but I haven't finished collating their answers. But just off the top of my head, in a totally non-scientific summary, I would say it's mostly word of mouth, or they see a flyer, or someone said they learned about it on Facebook, which I thought was interesting because I didn't put it on Facebook, so someone else did. Word is getting out in all kinds of ways. A lot of people hear about it from the senior center or the community center. And I'm thinking about that in the outreach too. How do we make sure we're reaching people who are not already connected with any of those places?
Well, it's great.
If it's just me dashing into the Golden Gate Fields parking lot and putting the flyers up.
Can I say something? I'm sorry, I don't want to go. Jennifer Hanson Romero, she's the president of the Albany Solano Association. She had a really great idea, for people that can afford it. And she said she keeps $1 bills, and then if she sees someone panhandling, she'll give them one of these cards with a dollar bill. And say, this is a place, if you have some needs, you could. So I think that's not everyone can afford to do that, but I started carrying some ones in my purse, and I think that's a great way to I saw some guy handling on the street in Berkeley, and he just probably threw the card away, but it made me feel good.
You never know, and folks, not everyone is interested in coming into a center either, and that's something we respect also.
Yeah.
Well, you say you're seeing more complicated needs. What kinds of things are you seeing?
So I had one person who has been homeless for more than a decade, who has some mental health challenges that make it very difficult for him to access services, even with the open door policy, to get through the whole intake. It feels very invasive, all those questions. And so that's one. Another, like I talked a little bit about before, is someone who really wants housing, and then when you get right up to it, it's, I don't know if not that place. I don't know. Let me think. A lot of folks who are sort of like right on the edge, so folks who are not homeless but vulnerably housed, who are either disabled or older adults and retired. They're living on a fixed income. Their income is not going to increase. They've lived in this community for decades and they don't want to move, but if their rent increases, they can't afford it. And so how do we find new housing for them? And that's very challenging. We keep the lists and we help people apply, but the truth is the waiting lists are long if they're even open, and there's only so much we can do.
It sounds like housing is probably the biggest issue.
Yep, housing is the most popular table, the most flyers that we give out, the most help that we do. Almost everyone, it's housing and something else. I don't think, with the exception of some folks who are looking for care for their aging parents, I don't think I've met anyone yet for whom housing is not a concern.
It becomes an important source of feedback for the council to be hearing that on a regular basis.
I agree, right. Give them motivation for pushing the housing issues through.
Anything else?
Tara, I'd love to connect with you at some point around the schools and kind of what you guys are up to, and if there's any community service classes or anyone who wants to get involved, I'd love to find ways to do that, even if outside center hours, because I know that's during school.
Yeah, we should talk, definitely.
Any other questions for me?
I guess that's it. Thank you very, very much.
Yes. For coming out with your bad throat, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm all right. Thank you for having me.
And feel better.
Oops,
And
now,
congratulations. It's really fabulous.
Thank
his
you.
hand
Well, I should come here more often.
Alan might have a question for
Alan, you want to say something?
Allison.
I hope there's time for the public to speak. We have a couple of volunteers. So.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Yes, yes.
I'm Alan Maris, Albany resident and a volunteer at the Resource Center. I look forward to going each day that I go. I try to go at least once a week, and I think I get there twice a week fairly often. Allison has been really pretty thorough about training volunteers so that we really understand homeless issues, and that so that we're well prepared to understand and be empathetic with people with homeless issues as well as mental health issues. We've been through a couple of trainings. Kind of hoping we'll do the mental health first aid. I think St. Albans will offer that fairly soon. They've done it for the shower program. It's hard to imagine that we haven't had this resource center before, and I know that Paul O'Curry felt that way as well. And I think he'd be so pleased with what we've got now. It's
For sure.
pretty exciting. Thank you, Allison. Thank you for listening.
And thank
Thank
you
you.
for the work you're doing. Really appreciate it.
I didn't fill out a green card.
It's all right. We're all friends here.
I'm Nancy Tyler, and I volunteer on Wednesdays. And my background is crisis work in homeless shelters and dual diagnosis, and so I'm ready. I can almost take, in a gentle way, anything on when someone walks in. But Allison is, I mean, I didn't come here to praise her, but how can I help not? It's just such a wonderful thing. I've lived in Albany off and on since the early 90s. My grandkids live here. And I just love Albany, even though I'm from a tiny town south of Boston on the ocean. And when I heard about the shower program, I just thought, Albany is actually doing that? It's so wonderful. So I am really happy to participate in this, and housing is the main thing. So I urge you on for any support that you can give. It's a wonderful program. It's not like a church basement, though. It's open.
Yeah.
And the quilters have been there for over 20 years. You know, there's a quilting group that goes there, so maybe, I mean, we can probably stay there for a while. I don't know, I'm just rambling on. But anyways, I thank you for listening. I thank you for listening.
Thank you for volunteering.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we should leave now because this is too good to go on.
Right.
But we must. So moving on to rent review ordinance. You're going to give us a little report.
Yes, so I have a brief update for you tonight, but hopefully we'll have more information for you at the beginning of the new year. But as part of my new duties as interim assistant city manager, the rent review ordinance has been assigned to me, and it has become a priority to get a program in place soon. As for the results of the RFP, the city that was put out in late spring, we did receive one application, but after reviewing it, it was determined that it did not match the requested services that we had in the RFP. So the RFP is now closed. I have been in communication with Echo Housing, and this is the agency that provides tenant landlord services and fair housing and counseling services for Alameda County. And they also administer the rent review program in San Leandro and also Union City. So we've been talking to them about what they do, their role, and we'll continue to do so and do some research. So the next step is to provide an update to the City Council in January, probably at the first meeting in January, which is January 8th, and request an authorization to move forward with the writing of an ordinance, a rent review ordinance. So I'll be preparing a staff report and presenting that to Council in January. And hopefully I can come back to you at the February meeting with an update and some more information based on how the council meeting goes in January.
Will the ordinance be coming to us first, or?
Yes.
Yeah,
So part of your role will be to review the ordinance and provide feedback.
great. I'm very pleased that it's become more of a priority and that you're focused on it. I know that it wasn't the center for Jeff, and he's got other things. So, but we've certainly been concerned, and I'm glad to hear that the city is concerned, too, that nothing's been happening for a while.
Yes.
So great, that's good. Was Echo Housing not talked to earlier?
When I did speak to the executive director, she said she missed the RFP. She doesn't. Yes. But it was sent out pretty widely. So she's glad that I reached out, and we'll continue to talk and see.
Yeah, they seem the perfect agency to do this. And
Yeah, there's really no.
San Leandro was one of the models we looked at, so,
Right.
yeah.
Right, and there's also recently Union City, who has adopted a rent review program, non-binding rent review program, and they, if you look at their website, I think you'll be pleased with what you see. They're very thorough and very well explained program. So, and that's also run by Echo Housing.
But they, Echo, have they responded to the RFP? Or they are,
No, they did not.
not yet? But we're anticipating that they may.
Right. Well, so that's something that I have to kind of work out as part of my presentation for council in January, is basically to ask them for authorization to start working on the ordinance and seeking an agency that could help us administer the program.
Okay, but Echo may very well be.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Anything else on this?
I don't have anything.
Okay. I thought,
Public comment.
yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alan. Sorry if I'm not firing on all cylinders this evening, so.
Yeah, I'm not either, so I'm in sympathy. Alan Maris, Albany resident. I just read tonight in one of Allison's little case histories that I think this rent review board does have some very good possibilities. Here's a case where a gentleman has a very positive relationship with his landlord, and he's lived in his house for a long time. He's getting into financial problems. It indicates that tenants and landlords can have very positive relationships, and I think this rent review board can work to promote that much more, so keep going with it and push it.
That's what we're doing.
Thank you.
Anyone else? So we thought it would be a good moment to take a look at our work plan and take stock and see where we are, and whether there are some other things that we should be moving on. I think most of the things are in motion.
Yeah, still waiting for the senior update, but if that's going to come in February,
Yeah,
then we can
that's-
look at
that's
moving forward
in
there.
process, it's just not here yet. So let's see, promote housing and availability. That's one where we've had some discussions with Jeff. But I'm not sure where that one stands. Isabel, will that be coming back to us in some form?
Which one was?
The objective 1.2, promote housing availability. We are doing outreach and referrals. I guess that refers mostly to Project Hope.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that comes back to you on a quarterly basis when
Yeah.
I receive the reports from BFHP.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think there is some sentiment here to want to get a little bit more deeply into the issue of affordable housing.
Yes. Sure. I can ask Jeff if he has any updates that he could share with you.
Yeah,
Yes.
we did agree that he would make a regular report to us on that. And we know that, there's discussion underway about the the funding that was passed in the proposition.
The A1.
Yeah, A1, thank you. So I think we want to stay on that.
So are you saying we should add a third item under B? Conduct housing outreach?
In order to add an item, we would have to go back to council. I don't think it's
Yeah.
necessary to do that.
Okay.
Usually, these get developed on a 2-year basis, but we can go back to council in the midpoint and make some suggestions for change. I
Well,
think for now, we can
Yeah.
proceed with that issue without it being explicitly on the,
okay.
Yeah, I agree.
I had a comment on C to kind of flush that out to make it more detailed, but like you said, if we want to do that, but I think it probably implies this anyway. Review rent review program draft ordinance when requested by community development staff. And to me, what that says is to promote, track, and provide guidance and feedback on the development of the rent review ordinance. Okay.
I think that's the implication.
Okay.
So soda tax, we've made our contribution. That one is done, at least for the moment. The engage our diverse community, that is the inclusivity piece, those 2 objectives. And we're going a little beyond the charge, but I think that's okay. And we'll have something on that in the winter. Then there's this business of funding mechanisms that has to do with options for low-income exemptions from future tax measures and franchise agreements. I don't know if there's anything on the horizon right now.
Yeah, not at this time, but as we get closer to the elections and ballot measures are considered, if there's anything that needs to come to you, we'll come.
Okay.
So basically, we're covering our work plan pretty well. Is there anything anybody wants to add to the table for now?
Well, where do you have the aging in place stuff? I mean, I'm
Under 2.2 for community-wide inclusivity, number 3 talks about investigating service gaps for seniors to age in place. And we're supposed to have an update about that in
yeah, I
February.
see,
so-
okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
all right. I mean, it seems like, I guess, such a little thing for such a big topic.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
Okay, so I would just invite you to think about, as we get to the middle year, the end of this year, whether there are things we want to bring back to council and propose being included. Yeah, and whether there are, certainly there are social and economic justice issues that we don't have on our plate right now. So let's just all keep our ears open for things that we should be paying attention to.
Yeah.
So that's that. Does anybody else have a comment on the work plan, Alan?
Under your affordable housing item, I have a little bit of news from Diverse Housing Working Group. We tried to engage Susan Friedland from RAHA, the Affordable Housing Development Group. She used to be on our planning commission. And she's already been engaged by the planning department to do a study of affordable housing sites in Albany, by Jeff, I believe. So she's already working, the city is moving forward on this. So, and I think probably early next year, the city will have some more information for the community on affordable housing projects. Hopefully that one site that's down on Cleveland and Washington, I think, near Pierce Street Park. So progress is being made.
Great.
Anything else on the work plan? Okay, good. So now we come to the meeting schedule. Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, I think we wanted to run by the commission whether or not the commission wanted to meet January 2nd, which is the first Tuesday in January. For the last 2 years, you've canceled the meeting in January because it's always so close to the holiday, and just skip January and go to February. So I think I wanted to run that by the commission.
Do we have any like major updates that are time sensitive for January, or does
No,
it
I don't
seem?
think so.
No. Okay.
Everything is more or less in process. Nothing
Yeah.
is ready for action, so
Yeah.
is that
Sounds
acceptable
reasonable.
to everyone?
I move that we cancel our January 2nd meeting.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No one, okay. Selection of chair and vice chair. This is the point in the year when get to make some changes in the management around here. And I've enjoyed chairing the meetings, and I'm quite happy to turn the gavel over. So let's start with chair and invite nominations from the committee.
I nominate Kathy.
Yeah. I second that nomination.
Any other
There's
nominations?
an opening on the commission, you know. You could apply. There's an opening on the commission.
I'm thinking about it, but I'm not very, like, I'd be a little raw on here, I'm not very schooled in a commission, but I have a good heart.
Yeah.
That's all you need. Okay.
So any other nominations for chair? Seeing none, the nominations are closed. And we have Kathy as proposed as chair. We'll take a vote to make that official. All in favor of Kathy being the new chair of the group?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for your work, volunteer work.
And then we come to vice chair nominations.
I nominate Tara.
Okay. Anyone else?
Second, I'll second it.
Okay. Seeing none, is that acceptable to you?
Yeah.
Okay. So all in favor of Tara being vice chair?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We are done.
Great.
That's good.
There anything else that anybody wants to bring up before we adjourn?
No?
Well, I would like to see us talk with city council about getting another person on the committee.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's
Michael Barnes.
Michael?
It's Michael,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Barnes.
Michael Barnes
Yeah.
is supposed to.
Or would that be something that you would do, Isabel?
He's aware, and I think the position has been posted.
I know at least 2 people have applied.
Oh.
And their applications have been in for at least a few weeks, or if not more, maybe a few months.
Okay.
So if you,
Okay, I'll look into it.
okay, thanks.
Very good.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
nice to have a full
good.
commission.
Yeah, it's nice to have a full commission. And it'd be nice if we could have a little more diversity over time too as well.
For sure.
True.
Some of us are getting a little old.
Speak for yourself.
So, seeing no other items, shall we adjourn?
Do you want to take suggestions for agenda?
Oh, that's true. Well, the next meeting would then be in February. We know we should have something on rent review,
Quarterly updates from.
quarterly
Yeah.
updates, and
Senior
senior housing is a
Housing.
big one, and report on inclusivity.
inclusivity. Yeah.
So that seems like a lot.
Pretty full.
Okay. Sounds good.
Well, can you put A1 down since they're going to talk, they're talking about it in January? Well, no, never mind.
Yeah, I just want to remind the commission that these are future agenda items. It doesn't mean that it's going to be necessarily
Every
at the next meeting,
Sure.
but I usually work with the chair and depending on when staff is available also, so we work together on building the agenda.
Also, in terms of the soda tax, there's no like concrete timeline for the council in terms of like when they have to make decisions by, correct?
They were talking about having to make decisions by April,
Okay.
because that's when they need,
The funding.
To do the
allocation for
budget.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's pretty far in the
lobby
future.
them in the meantime.
Okay. Yeah.
In terms of this, excuse me,
Yeah, I was gonna ask, we're gonna address the letter we received.
the letter from Ms. Kostanek
Oh, right.
about rent control provisions, it seems like there continues to be this idea circulating in the community that we're working on a rent control ordinance.
Right.
I don't know what we do to make people aware that we're not. Will you respond to her and indicate that
Just.
there is no rent
I-
control
they
ordinance?
I did respond to her.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and then I told her that either the chair or I would respond to her after the meeting. I mean, I took it upon, I'm sorry, but I just said, it's
It's just a
just
matter
for a
of
report
information.
back. Yeah, it was just information. I
Yeah.
didn't give her any,
Yeah,
so I said, so Kathy said she'll respond back to
Yeah,
her.
but
Okay.
part of the reason why people keep referring it to as rent control is because that was kind of something that certain people wanted to promote to bring a negative opposition to it. And then there was also a letter that went out
I got
to
that.
the community saying that it was rent control.
Yeah.
I actually never saw that. I'd like to see that, but,
I might have mine, I could bring it.
yeah.
I still have it.
But, yeah, maybe at our next meeting, we can talk about how we can clarify that with the community.
Yeah, well, I think once there's some motion on the rent review ordinance, it'll be clearer.
That's true.
What it is and what it's not.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's important.
okay, very good. All right, so, motion to adjourn,
So moved.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Happy holidays,
Tara, do you
everyone.
need to ride?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Have a good.